These thoughts up in my head, things I never did. I took some L's, but I'm still here.
I got these thoughts up in my head. I toss and turn about some things I never said. I got regrets about some things I never did. I took some risks and took some L's, but I'm still here. And I know.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Overthinking Thoughts Pod. I'm your host, Ed, and as always, journey with me as we pursue greatness in a world full of chaos. I'm tired, man. I'm not even gonna lie to y'all. It's been quite the week, past 2 weeks, and we gonna talk about it. So that's gonna be us. But before we get to that point, shout out to everybody, new followers over on TikTok. I see y'all. I appreciate y'all. Thank you for liking and commenting and adding the videos to the favorites. I appreciate it. To my loyal followers over on Instagram, thank y'all so much for always sharing the reels, liking and supporting, commenting and all those good things. I really appreciate it. So I definitely want to say thank you to that. If you're new here, we try to pursue greatness in a world full of chaos. We talk about day-to-day things that we might overthink, that make us feel overwhelmed, that we might feel anxious about. But at the end of the day, we have to remember who we are and whose we are. And we try to do our best with the steps that we take. And we give God thanks through the whole thing. So that's kind of my platform. I'm on episode 33. Wow, that's really awesome. So episode 33, and ironically, this episode is called Stressed. Because I know that it's something that we have, but we don't always talk about. And it just so happens to be something that I'm currently going through right now. So I figured, why not talk about it? So before we do all that and get into it, as always, anybody who wants to find the podcast can find it over on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, also on YouTube as well. And then if you want to hit us up on social media, I'm over on TikTok at OverthinkingThoughtsPod. And you can also find me over on Instagram at OverthinkingThoughtsPod as well. Like, subscribe, share, all those good things. We will truly appreciate it. Before we talk about stress, let's talk about some good things. Celebrated my wife this weekend. Another year on this earth. So definitely thankful for that. And when you guys get this episode, we will have celebrated an anniversary, 4 years. So that's awesome too. You know, there's definitely good with what's going on in life, but like everything in life, you gotta take the good with the bad. Well, not so much the bad, but there's just some things can be very overwhelming. But today we're gonna try to find a way to just kind of work ourselves through and go through there. So to start off the episode, I'd say the past couple of days have been anxiety filled, and I couldn't quite put my finger on why. I just always felt like I was just tense, like I was waiting for something to happen, like my body was trying to prepare itself for something, and I could feel like just really anxious, and I was just like, man, I don't know like what's going on or whatever. And usually what I would do in the past, mentally I would try to control it, but that doesn't do anything, right? Like all that does is just stresses you out even more. You try to have this you think you have this control, and it's really just false control over a situation that you never had control over in the first place. And it could really mess with your mind. It could definitely make you feel like you have no sense of direction, even though you have this false direction in your mind, right? And so I was talking to my wife about it and just trying to figure out, like, man, what, I can't quite pinpoint it. And she's like, maybe, you don't have a primary focus on one thing. So now your mind's trying to figure out why, and that can cause unnecessary stress. And I'm like, yeah, that definitely is a thing. And then I got to thinking some more, and I think I've kind of figured out what it is. It's a combination of things. There's just a lot that's happening all at once. My car's been down for like, I don't know, I've lost count. At this point, the crazy part about it is It's a Hyundai, and there's a recall, but all the dealerships are full. And I've been trying to find ways to get it looked at and all this other stuff. And I pretty much ran into every closed door that you can think of. Um, Reached out to corporate kind of did a thing and sent me back to the beginning. Reached out to some particular dealerships, had some interesting responses from some that were actually really helpful. But as it stands, I am vehicle-less. So we've been sharing one car, and it's been, don't get me wrong, God's been providing. We've been getting back and forth and doing what we need to do. My son's been getting to practice. My kids been going to daycare, school. We've been getting to work, doing what we need to do. And it's also nice to have people that are flexible with life situations. So it's all like that's a good sign. I thank God for that. That's part of it. Finances are always a thing. We've got medical bills, student loan. Well, not really student loan. It's just out there, but I already forgave it. I don't know why they won't. But what else is there? Groceries, bills, gas, stuff like that. And so a lot of stuff that we want to do can't really do because we ain't got it. So just trying to manage that. Took on a new task at work, so just trying to manage that. And then just life in general. Like some days are just better than others. And having anxiety, like when you really try to learn to let it go, there's moments where you are feeling great. And then there's other moments where it just feels like because you aren't stressing over it or feeling anxious about it, I don't know about everybody else, but in my mind, it feels like something's wrong. Because I conditioned my mind to always be prepared. But now that I'm trying to just like let go, I think my biggest struggle is really trusting that it's okay to let go. And that's what we're supposed to do. We are. We're not supposed to hold on to these things and hold on to these burdens. We're supposed to give them to God. But I'm also human. So I have my moments where I'm like telling myself, like, okay, Lord, I know you got it and I gotta trust it. And then it's still kind of on my mind. And I'm like, okay, God, well, you've been telling me to trust. I'm believing in you, but the results aren't coming as quick as I wanted to be. And it just you find yourself trying to find peace or happiness or something. And so when I was thinking about this, because I was trying to think about what I even wanted to talk about, and I was like, I'm going through this right now. Like this would be perfect. I'm overwhelmed by it because there's a lot of I can see I can see like what I need to deal with, but I can't see the end result. And I think that part is the part that makes me feel a little overwhelmed and more stressed out than I want to be. And I'm tired, man. So between all that, I'm just trying to figure out like where do I end up? What do I do? But that's stress in general. It can definitely wear you down. It can definitely deplete your energy. And that's why like I have to remind you. And I don't know if you notice, and if you're watching this, like I keep messing with my shoulders because I feel my shoulders raising up almost to my ears and my jaw's been clenched. So as a reminder to you, unclench your jaw, relax your shoulders, and breathe. I know that at the end of all of this, it's all going to work itself out. Going through it can be challenging sometimes. Um, but at the same time, I am choosing to believe, even in the midst of all this, my goal is to choose to believe that this is building me up for something greater, and I'm just going to keep finding that. So obviously, turn it to the word and something I need to focus on more. Share two Bible verses with you. I think I'm going to meditate on these. So feel free to steal these if you want. But John 14:27 states, "Peace I leave you, my peace I give to you. Not as the world gives, do I give to you. Let not your hearts be troubled, neither let them be afraid." And before I jump into the Bible ref version of what's going on, that part about not as the world gives, do I give to you, I feel like that's something we really need to pay attention to because there's a lot of for lack of better words, stress relievers that are out there that people will say, "Oh yeah, just do this or do that." And I mean, like, there's things that work. Exercise is great. Resting, self-care, meeting up with people, being social, whatever, like those things are cool. But what you don't want to do is fall into things that can lead to addiction or um for some relapsing or just anything that takes you away from what God's trying to build you to be. So you have to be careful because the world will always like have something that looks desirable, but not always profitable. And depending on what you invest in, you're either going to gain wealth in the sense of wealth of knowledge from God and wisdom, or you're going to go bankrupt in trying to please the world, and the world will not care where you fall. So you have to be very careful in how you move. But with this Bible verse, Bible ref tells us that not knowing brings its own type of terror. Experience makes people less nervous to drive cars, fly in airplanes, endure thunderstorms, or receive medical injections. The experiences themselves don't change. What changes is the person's expectations. They know what is happening and what will happen next. That brings confidence and greatly reduces fear. It brings peace. The peace that Christ offers is not like that of the world. The best we can expect from the natural world is unfairness and death. Whew. Even attempts to be moral without God lead only to frustration. Christ's peace here refers to a hope and reassurance that goes beyond what a fallen world can offer. It is permanent, guaranteed, and eternal. So God's peace is going to follow you and has been following you from the time you were created. It will be with you in death and will still be with you when you reach eternal life when we get to heaven, because ultimately that's the goal. While we're here on earth and it feels like we're going through hell sometimes, the biggest thing to remember is not to overwhelm ourselves with this like false sense of what we think might happen or what we expect will happen, because a lot of times that's not what the outcome is. And stress can really damage you. I remember, man, okay, so I remember this time I was working this job, definitely top of stressful things. And first I went into it kind of optimistic. I was like, well, I'll see what happens. And I was like excited about it. As time went on, I tell people I was professionally immature in the sense of I didn't know how to ask for help. And I just tried to do everything on my own. And I realized that I couldn't. And with the way that this job was going, I needed help, but I didn't know how to quite fit with the surroundings there. I didn't know how to fit with certain employees. I didn't it was just different. Um and I struggled with that because I was trying to, and I mean it was temporary because it actually led me to a better position, which was great, but it also showed me like that feeling. I never wanted to have that feeling again. In fact, I remember when I used to drive to work, um in this particular job, and when I would go, I started my start time, I think was like at 8 or 8:30, something like that. I can't remember. I think it was 8. Pretty sure it was. Whatever. Anyway, so I would get there at like 7:50. So I got time to get from this parking garage into the job. But I would sit in my car and I would go through the day in my mind and just try to tell myself to survive through it. And I knew that that wasn't right. Like I knew it was uncomfortable, but there was the one part that was like, man, maybe you're just not giving yourself enough time to adjust to the job, or maybe you're just not pushing yourself as hard as you're supposed to. Maybe you're giving up on things easy. But then as time went on, that burden just became heavier and heavier and heavier. And it got to the point where I was like feeling sick every time I went in. Oh God, I remember it too. Like I'm going back to that moment. Like I drive in, do my little parking pass, go up to second level, reverse my car into the third spot, back it up, and then I would sit there. And sometimes I walked in on time, and sometimes I might be 5 minutes late, might be 10 minutes late. I think the latest was like 30, 35 minutes of just being so stressed to even walk into my place of employment. I was so overwhelmed and so anxious, and it wasn't until I was like faced with like, hey, look, we notice your job performance is dropping. You need to figure something out, or we gonna have to put you in play. Like you might just have to let you go. So here was my prayer. I went home that night and I just was like, okay, Lord, they're giving me basically 2 months, 8 weeks to figure this thing out. I want a new job in 6 because I don't think that even if I do figure it out, that I'm gonna be 100% happy. I want to find something that brings me joy again. And in the midst of that, after I prayed that prayer, I went back into work like that was probably the happiest I've ever been because I knew that one thing was gonna happen. Either I was gonna find something new or I just won't go have a job anymore, which I would have dealt with that part later. But there was this burden of like, I got you covered. So we went through the weeks and all that good stuff. And sure enough, it's crazy how God works. On a Wednesday, I got a call. This is week 6, by the way. Wednesday, I got the call. Hey, we want to bring you on the team. We think that you would be great. Oh, I love it. I definitely accept. This is definitely what I want to do. It's less stressful, more pay, and it's going to, I feel at this moment in time, fulfill what I'm going for. Beautiful. Thursday came, and I'm going into the job like, all right, how do I prepare to tell them that, you know, I'm gonna take this other job? Didn't have to. They basically pulled me in, and I like kind of sat down and looked around and was like, hmm. I was like, I think I know what this is. But I didn't stress. And the reason why I didn't stress in that moment was because I knew God was with me. And to this day, I remember having this conversation with a former colleague of mine. And they were like, they were just so impressed with the fact that like you weren't upset, you didn't yell, you just accepted what was going on and you moved forward. And I was like, because I had already prayed on it. Like I was already felt good about it. I put in that moment, God had full control, and there was a piece that I can't describe. It was beyond me, it was bigger than me, and God already had it taken care of. So, what was there to worry about? So, when I think about what I'm going through now, I know at some point this is going to find its way to where I need to be. I just think that when we're in the waiting period, we're so impatient and we just have to learn to relax. So, as I'm trying to figure it out, there's just these moments where like you feel tested because when things don't start moving your way, you try to start making moves. And obviously there's some action that you have to take, but you have to know when to take action and when to let God take over. And sometimes we try to take over more than what God really wants us to do. That's a hard lesson to try to figure out because I feel like, especially men, like you're taught to just be like, hey, nah, if it's a problem, you need to figure it out now. You're not told to like wait and be patient. You're not told to, hey, take your time on this. A lot of times you're told, no, you got to go get it now. So whatever you got to do, we got to hustle, we got to grind, we got to do this, we got to do that. And like you might get it, but like at what cost? If it costs you more in the end to go get it, did you really gain anything? Or did you just waste time? And that's a hard line to kind of walk because we never really know. We just have to trust that things are going to be okay. And so many people will. I mean, you see it on social media or in posts where people will talk about how if somebody says we need to trust God's timing, there's a lot of people that go against that because they feel like it doesn't make sense. But then when I watch people try to create things in their own way, I watch it kind of crumble. And then you hear about all these people, like you watch all these people in like comments and stuff about, well, they got all this money. What are they stressed out about? Man, that money don't mean nothing. Money does not erase stress. Pleasure does not erase stress. A lavish lifestyle, um, celebrity status, fame, none of that erases stress. Until you actually find the root problem or what's stressing you, and you take the right course of action, which I would say pray first and then move in the direction in which God has guided you, that is the best way to get through that. And sometimes God might say, don't move yet, stay where you are. And you're like, why? Why? I understand better than you. That's why. Okay. So I'm trusting that in this situation that God understands better than me, but it is a little stressful. But there's reassurance in that. God tells us in Psalms 55:22 that we should cast our burdens on the Lord. He will sustain you. He will never permit the righteous to be moved. Cast your burdens. What are burdens? Financial burdens, relationship burdens, addiction burdens, job burdens, personal stressors, trauma, whatever it is. God's saying, I'll carry it. It gives you a different meaning of what the cross is too, because it's like we know cross, or we know cross. Oh boy, we know that Jesus hung from the cross. The image we see is his body from the cross. What we don't see is our sins, our shortcomings, our burdens, our troubles, our anxieties, our fears, our worries. That all that's a part of that. And so for Jesus to tell us, "Yeah, I got you covered," well, we got to start trusting it. And I would say, like, if you're not a believer and you're just like, I don't know how this would work, try it. Try it. Seriously. Because I can probably, if I sit back and I get out of this negative mindset of all the mistakes I've ever made, or oh, I feel like I'm not deserving of this, or I'm not the person, or I'm gonna come up short or whatever. I bet I can find situations where God really delivered me and put me in positions to where I never thought I would be, but I thrived. And it wasn't because it was me, it was all him. Anything I've been successful in was never my own doing. It was all God. Anything where I felt like I was successful and thought that I thrived on my own was my doing, and it didn't work. So, I can only speak from experience, and I hope that you would give it a chance as well. But the beautiful part about this is that anything that we are dealing with and that we're facing, God says, just give it to me. Lay your burden down. There's a contemporary Christian song, I believe it's called At the Foot of the Cross. And one of the parts of the song is where it says, I lay every burden down at the foot of the cross. And I just imagine like walking up and being like, Lord, my stress, well, my financial situation, my family, my kids, my job, whatever. And just being like, Lord, have it. And visually like trying to do that. But then there's also those moments where we're like, all right, Lord, cool. But then if he don't move quick enough, we're like, let me just take this and take this and take this back. And that's the part where I think really gets us overwhelmed. Um, the other thing too to kind of put into this is where it says that he will never permit the righteous to be moved. Well, who are the righteous? The righteous are the ones that who believe in Christ Jesus and who do their best to follow his will every single day. Didn't say that you wouldn't be tempted though, and didn't say that you wouldn't be tested. And there's that verse, no weapon formed shall prosper. True. Does not mean that the weapon will not be formed either. That part is still real. It just won't prosper. So it's like going through it and we see it. Obviously, there is a feeling about that. But if God's telling you that he won't permit the righteous to be moved, then we got to trust and believe that that's true. If that's his word, that's truth. I will tell you that as a person who is trying to learn more, there are times where I catch myself being like, I don't feel like it, or I don't want to, like, I should read, but now I want to. Maybe I'll read this quick devotional, or maybe I'll do this. Like, so there's times where I do read, but then there's other times where I find myself like feeling hypocritical in a sense where it's like, all right, man, we got to trust God. But then I have these moments where, like, as As a Christian, I fall short in my walk. Does that make me less than? I don't think God thinks that. I think God will give me the nudges to get me back on track. Because once again, none of us are perfect. Stress is a real thing. I mean, even pastors, they deal with stress. There are pastors, good people that I know that are out there, that are working hard and trying to figure out how do they grow their church? How do they keep their members? How do they prepare messages, and knowing that not every message they preach, although it is truthful, will land the right way, because then there's people who want to combat that sometimes. Not all the time, but there are people, they might hear something and go, oh wait, that's about me. Nah, I don't like that. We've all been there. But they're trying to do their best to provide us with that sense of security and safety of knowing that God is with us through everything that we do. That's a lot. So I say that to say, pray for your pastors, pray for your members of the church, pray for their families too. That's the stuff we don't see. But the one thing I do notice is that they show up all the time. So then we need to do the same thing. Your situation might feel heavy, but that doesn't mean you stop showing up. That was the one thing that kept me going in my previous job, working with students. I stressed out about it a lot because there were so many decisions I had to make. And there were times where I felt like it was by myself, and other times where I just didn't know what to do. But I also knew that in order for me to make a difference, I still had to show up. And I would encourage you today that if you're dealing with stressful situations or something that, you feel like you can't overcome, or you're trying to like find your way, man, just keep showing up. And first things first, when you first wake up, even if it's quick or a long, whatever, first thing, oh God, thank you. Because it didn't have to happen. I think about that a lot, actually. I think that also adds to my stress of like, what happens if it's over with? Where would I go? Right. And I'm praying that I go to heaven. But I also know that there's things that I need to do, um to show God like I'm living for him. And all I can ask for is one day at a time. That's all I have. Like, I have this moment. And in this moment, I'm giving you this podcast. And through this podcast, I'm trying to encourage you that through your stress, or through anything that makes you anxious, or that anything that makes you overwhelmed, hard to sleep at night, weighing heavy on your mind, stress all on your shoulders and your jaw, your headaches, your fatigue, you're tired, there is rest for you. There's also peace. And there's also a God who wants to see you do well. And he's asking you to come directly to him. That's it. He's not going to force you to do it. He's not going to push you. He's not going to make it mandatory. No, 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 no. He wants you to be there. I relate that to, and like, not that this is the same level, but okay. From basketball, right? Coaches always had this weird way of making you like get to do stuff. They'll be like, yeah, we got weights. I mean, it's not mandatory, but you should probably be there. And there's people that didn't catch that. You hear it's not mandatory and you think, oh, I don't have to do it. But isn't there a benefit of being there? Isn't there a benefit of showing up? Isn't there a benefit of you going to try to be the best person that you can be, the best athlete that you can be, the best boss that you can be, best employee, best student, best player? Can we use that example in how we pursue God as well? And like, I'm talking to you, but I'm talking to me. Show up every day. Ask God to whatever it is that's stressing you. Lord, here's what it is. I give it to you. Help me to stay out of the way of what you do. Because if I keep interfering, it's only going to prolong the process. Remember, remember what I say about the journey, right? When you rush the process, you disrupt the journey. Trust God with every move that you make, okay? And remember, relax those shoulders, unclench that jaw, and breathe. Because everything that you're facing right now is going to build you to be the person that God wants you to be. But you got to trust it. I'm going to do my best to do it. I pray that you do the same. Pray for me. I'm going to pray for you. All right? And as always, I believe in you. Now go believe in yourself. It's the Overthinking Thoughts Pod. I'm Ed. We out.
These thoughts up in my head. Things I never did. I took some L's, but I'm still here.
I got these thoughts up in my head. I toss and turn about some things I never said. I got regrets about some things I never did. I took some risks and took some L's, but I'm still here. And I know.